Hello, and thank you very much for joining us for this webinar. This is incorporating creative robotics into your technology strategy for pre-K through fifth grade. Today, we're going to be talking about the ways that the challenges that districts and schools are facing in looking at how to implement an age-appropriate and effective computer science and STEM and technology program for their youngest learners. And in particular, we'll be looking at some of the ways that Kibo, the robot created by our company, Creative Robotics, can help districts achieve those goals. I'm very happy to be joined by some guests today who will share some information with you about the programs that they're overseeing in their districts. I just wanted to do a little bit of housekeeping at the beginning to let you know that we do have a question and answer feature in the webinar today. And we're looking forward to addressing your questions at the end of the webinar. We're going to save at least 10 minutes or so. So on the right, or within the webinar interface, you'll see that you have a tab that says question or chat, and you can use that feature to send us a question, and we will do our best to address all of the questions at the end of the webinar. My name is Jason Ennis. I work with Kinderlab, and I'll be presenting first, framing observations about the challenges that districts face and the kinds of solutions that are out there to support creative and age-appropriate technology instruction. I'm so happy to be joined by two guests today. William Marsland from San Francisco Unified School District. Hello.
Hello.
And Jennifer Barker, who's joining us from Newport News Public Schools in Virginia. And she oversees the Cyber STEAM initiative for Newport News. So hello, Jennifer.
Hey, everyone. Hi.
Great. So we'll be moving through the observation or the presentation today, sort of in that order. I'll provide some framing information, then William will talk about San Francisco's implementation of computer science. And then Jennifer will share a bit about what Newport News is doing. And then we'll spend some time with Q&A. So again, just sort of letting you know who we have. William Mart is a CS content specialist. He's in the Curriculum and Instruction STEM office at San Francisco Unified School District. And Jennifer Barker is a STEM instructional specialist in the PK-8 Curriculum and Development program at Newport News. So those folks are going to be sharing their expertise, their observations, and their experience implementing or thinking about a comprehensive computer science and technology and STEM education program for their youngest learners in their districts. But first, I'd like to sort of provide a little bit of framing about who we are and about how we see the challenges that districts face and how a sort of full and age-appropriate technology tool can help support our goals for educating these young learners. So I'm the manager of training and curriculum development at Kinderlab Robotics. I am very happy to be here sharing information, the perspective of our company, the background of our company. Our mission at Kinderlab is to promote universal STEM literacy. And we see that as starting with the youngest learners, maintaining a focus on sort of equity and apps, as well as designing age-appropriate curriculum and tools. So purpose of our company really is to make available the Kibo robot. Kibo is a robotic platform designed for children as young as 4 years old to learn about science, about engineering, so about how to kind of create, express with technological tools. We were founded in 2013 by Mitch Rosenberg, who's an entrepreneur in technology systems, and also Dr. Marina Bears, who is a researcher whose research lab at Tufts University is focused on looking is to support child development goals through creative experiences with technology. She's the chair of the Elliott Pearson School at Tufts, which is the Child Study and Human Development Department. And her focus really is on looking at ways that we can take technology experiences, integrate them into early childhood in a way that really supports the developmental goals and needs of young. She and her research developed Kibo as a research program at Tufts, founded by the NS, and then she founded KinderLab Robotics to make that work available to more schools and teachers. Dr. Bears continues to publish and create books, and I would love for anyone who is interested in all of the research that we covered today to take a look at some of her books. I'm going to actually switch off my cam for a moment, folks, because I'm getting some reports that my audio is cutting in and out. So I'm going to turn off my webcam just to save some bandwidth, but I'm still here. Okay. So Dr. Bears and her team is the research that Dr. Bears is doing, and the tool that we're talking about, Kibo, exists within sort of a landscape and a set that I'd like to talk about in a kind of big picture way or broadly before we dive into the details. And the next couple of slides rely on the work of the wonderful organization Code.org, which is an advocacy organization dedicated to increasing access to computer science education. So we're in a landscape right now where states are beginning to implement computer science standards all the way down to early childhood. 34 US have adopted K-12 computer science standards, and that's up from just 6 states a couple of years ago. So this movement toward establishing quality standards for computer science education all the way from kindergarten and in some cases pre-K up is a nationwide trend. We also see that from a workforce development point of view, computing occupations and occupations that depend on an understanding of computer science are actually the #1 source of new wages in this country. So although we aren't always thinking about career development for our pre-K students, we do need to think about the changing economy and the role that our students will play in it in 15, 20 years. This trend that we see toward this kind of work in America and worldwide also comes with a kind of equity of access consideration. So right now we know that there's a preponderance of there's a gender imbalance and also a minority representation imbalance in STEM fields. So as educators, as public school educators in particular, we play a critical role in helping to balance this aspect of the STEM workforce and of access in general. You can see that over the last few years, as these standards have grown, as this focus on equity of access has grown, the percent of female students and underrepresented minority students who are participating in computer science AP exams has been steadily increasing. So this work is making a difference, but it's very important that we start early when we consider this kind of work. And the reasons are, there's several fold. One is the idea that interventions, of course, for younger children have a greater kind of return on investment. We've seen that in a lot of different fields. Computer science is no exception. The Heckman curve that's familiar to education policymakers shows us that the economic returns of investments that we make in early childhood education are the returns are strongest when we invest in young children. But we also find, and this draws on the work of Dr. Bears and her team, that some of the stereotypes, for example, that lead to an imbalance in gender representation in fields, some of those stereotypes start to take hold for kids as young as pre-K. So if we can give young children experiences with technology, of children in underserved areas, low socioeconomic status, if we can give all children creative, positive experiences with these tools in early childhood, we can address some of these and access gaps and equity gaps really at the source. So that's a kind of an economic argument and sociological argument for starting early with these tools. Dr. Bears and her team also identified some other very important advantages of giving young children creative experiences with these tools. One of the most important is that we can see coding as a literacy, as a way of children expressing themselves and sharing things that are meaningful to them. So we can see coding and computer science simply as another way to allow children to share, to connect with their peers, to express themselves. We also want, as we saw as early experiences counteracting stereotypes, we want to give children the experience of expanding their own self, to see themselves as people who are comfortable with technology, with engineering, people who we may not turn every child into an engineer, and that's not our goal, but we want children to have these experiences that allow them to keep those doors open for themselves. Now, when we think about ways to introduce these kinds of experiences to children, this is where the advantage of robotics really comes into the picture, because we know that young children learn best when they're moving, when they're working with their hands, when they're working with concrete objects, also when they're given the opportunity to experiment, collaborate, and to play. So in all of these traits sort of argue for grounding this abstract learning, coding, in physical objects that young children can interact with, tangible objects that allow them to connect physically with these relatively abstract concepts. In fact, this last bullet, some of the research that Dr. Bears and her team did compared children's learning of computational thinking concepts using a robotics platform, using Kibo, versus an entirely screen-based platform. The children who worked with Kibo performed significantly better on assessments of their computational thinking abilities. So this advantage of robotics is demonstrated through science. So, okay, let's just think about taking all this together. What are some of the traits of a good sort of age-appropriate computer science solution for early childhood? Well, it should be attentive to these standards that are being developed both nationwide by the Computer Science Teachers Association, ISTE, and also by states. And the solution should really be part of a pathway where children can move through the sort of content and curriculum applied by these standards in a way that makes sense and is connected and continuous. The solution should also provide deep cross-curricular connections. We know that it's important in early childhood to connect like computers to other discipline areas. Even the NAEYC recommends that learning on something like computer science be situated in activities that are meaningful, relatable, connected to the rest of children's lives or to other content areas. So we want a tool that can be used to teach not just computer science, but to explore other concepts too. We also want to make sure we support all learners as they grow. So we want a tool to grow with children and of course, pedagogical research. We know that we need to be able to show the research basis of the tools that we implement. So with that in mind, I'll introduce you very briefly to Kibo. Kibo is the robot that KinderLab makes. The entire experience with Kibo is physical, not virtual, so there are no screens involved. That's another important aspect for children, but most importantly, it leverages that concrete learning that we know young children need to do. It's also designed to be built onto with arts and crafts materials, with Legos, with other building materials, so that the teacher can integrate the experience across a wide range of other disciplines. And I'll demonstrate, or I'll show you a few images that highlight that. So how do we make computer science screen-free for children? One of Dr. Bears and her team's big innovations was creating what you see here, wooden blocks that are part of the Kibo package. Each block represents one action for the robot to take, one command in Kibo's computer programming language. Children create sequences of these wooden blocks and then use a barcode scanner that's built into the robot to teach the robot their program, and then the robot acts it out. So by making the abstract idea of code into physical, tangible blocks that the children manipulate, we keep the focus on the physical space of the classroom and allow children to with their hands in a way that's so necessary at this age group. I mentioned decorating Kibo, so these are some examples of how Kibo can be situated into different content areas, curricular areas. This idea of A in STEAM, the arts integration, that allows us to take the experience of computer science and use to all kinds of stories that fit into a curriculum in various ways. So Kibo might become a school bus where the children program it to reenact the daily routines of the school bus driver navigating the neighborhood. Kibo might become a character in a story where children meet early literacy standards by retelling a scene from a story using their generated robot. So these are some examples of the way we can put this kind of computer science work into the curriculum. KinderLab produces a wide range of curriculum materials. These are standards aligned, and they carry children through beginning in PreK all the way up to second grade, which is our core curriculum, Growing with Kibo, and then beyond. Professional development supports all of this. It's so important that teachers be able to use these tools, of course, as well. So professional development is a critical component of implementing a pathway like this. Kibo begins with addressing the needs of those pre-K, those youngest learners, through that concrete engagement with manipulatives. And then following the standards that we've built our curriculum around, we progress right up through the K-2 standards bands, even into the 3rd to 5th grade standards bands. Children are able to engage with complex algorithms that include sensors and conditional behavior, all the way up to designing their own subroutines for Kibo. And the purpose of that is so that we can prepare children for handing off to more advanced upper elementary coding platforms like Scratch or other robotics tools that rely on screen-based programming. So this span of ages that Kibo addresses is really part of the whole picture. So we talked about how a solution needs to be driven by standards, provide these connections, support all learners as they grow, and be based on research. Kibo's curriculum is aligned with these standards. So we see Kibo as supporting a pathway that our guests today will also be able to speak to. The open-ended arts integrated curriculum allows us to connect students' interests across a range of disciplines with a technology and computer science experience, and then supporting all learners as they grow, starting with that need to keep the focus on concrete manipulatives and physical engagement for the youngest learners, scaling all the way up to some pretty advanced computer science concepts as we help children transition to the next tools. And then finally, of course, the 20 and more years that Dr. Bears and her team have done of research that feeds into the design of Kibo. This is an important attribute of any tool that's going to be used in a school context. So all of that in mind, I think it's to move the abstract to the concrete ourselves. So our first guest who will speak today is William Marsland. William is he's a computer science content specialist in San Francisco. He works with teachers, helping them learn how to use tools. He also was a music teacher as a technology teacher, so he understood in his bones that idea of kind of integrated learning and of the ways that self-expression is an important part of computer science education. I'm going to hand it over to Bill now, and thank you very much, Bill.
Great. Thank you so much, Jason. I appreciate this introduction, and I'm super excited to talk to everyone today about just how what you've sort of laid out is what we've put into reality here in San Francisco. I always find it's really helpful to sort of provide like a little bit of a base context for what we do in San Francisco, and then I'll actually jump into a little bit more of the concrete around like what creative robotics look like in San Francisco Unified. I'd also be remiss to say that if I didn't say that, I'm one of 8 folks in San Francisco who's working on computer science education for our district. I'm really proud that I get to support and lead the elementary implementation. We do have folks who are working on pre-K all the way up through 12. And let's see if I can advance to that next slide. There we go. In San Francisco, we've agreed upon some definitions, one of which is for computer science. And we like to say that computer science is using the power of computers to solve problems and express ourselves. And we find it's really important that we have the balance of both of those things, both the problem solving, which we typically think of, but then that creative self-expression. And so you'll see that in some of the examples I give you around creative robotics, and you'll actually see that across all of our curriculum pre-K through 12. So we're really fortunate in that our Board of Education fully supports this. And they supported this starting back in June of 2015 by putting in a resolution that all students in our district from pre-K to 12 should have experience or will have experience with computer science education. Our district, like many of yours, also has something we call our graduate profile, which is sort of like our cornerstone of what our students should be learning and doing in the classrooms. Again, this is everything I'm going to talk about right here is pre-K to 12. And so we're really proud that we get to address all 6 of these different elements of the graduate profile, and that this has helped us define computer science as a basic skill which all students should learn. I actually feel like it's really unique that I get to sit in the curriculum instruction office with math content specialists and English language arts content specialists, because a lot of times computer science isn't thought to be a content in that way. And so it's really cool to be part of a district that is very forward thinking. So in terms of that forward thinking, again, I would love to know like what grade levels you all teach at, but pretty typically you hear largely from districts that start at the high school level. And a lot of districts decide that they're going to start with high school because that's where they're going to start that pipeline into college. But we've realized that high school is really difficult because students are electing to take computer science. And that means that, you know, we're still missing out on the students who don't or already see themselves as computer scientists or naturally think that computer science could be something for them. So initially our outreach in 2015 started with middle schools and then has been expanding outward to elementary and then pre-K. And so we are, and I have another slide in a moment, but I'll show you about our elementary progression. But currently we are working with almost every elementary school in San Francisco around non-elective elementary and middle school computer science. And all that means is that we just want to make sure that computer science is a subject that every student has exposure to. It's not just something that they can opt in or out of, but we want everyone to have this really fun, creative exposure to it. And similar to some of the things that Jason said, we saw this, we are very intentional around starting early, and we saw the impact of that. And so we want our K students doing computer science. We are expanding out to pre-K, and pretty soon every pre-K, and in California, we call it transitional kindergarten. And I know other states call it other things, but we want every student from our youngest all the way up to 12th grade to be doing computer science. And to make that possible, we want it to be creative and relevant. We want students to be excited about the projects they're creating, and we want them to see them as something that connects with what they're doing with their lives. We want it to be something that like is meaningful and is connected to who they are. And as such, we've made our curriculum so that it is for all students. We want all students involved, females, we want students of color, students with special needs, English language learners. We want to make sure that we are connecting with each and every one of the students in our district. And to do that, we've actually been using specialists in the classroom. Typically a question I get, so I tossed it in here at the beginning, though during the Q&A, if folks have more questions about that, I can talk about it because it's one I usually get, but we do have specialists at the elementary and middle school level many of which who are co-teaching in the classrooms. If that goes to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so we do have 72 elementary schools. I might have gone too far. Jason, if you could make it go back a slide. I seem to be having trouble doing that, but I just wanted to share that we have 72 elementary schools, and we have slowly been implementing our curriculum to all those different sites. And our goal is actually to be at all 72 elementary schools across San Francisco in the upcoming school year. So, okay, now we can move forward to the next slide and get into some of the interesting things that we do in our curriculum. We use creative robotics all across our curriculum, pre-K to 5 especially, but we do carry it on into middle and high school as well. And because I'm thinking at the district level, not the classroom or school level, we do sort of scaffold the way we use robotics. So I'm going to specifically address Kibo in the pre-K level, because then we do use other robotics throughout, but all the activities I'm going to suggest can be done with Kibo or can be done with any robotics. And I'll also make sure that you have access to the links to see these lesson plans that we have created. So in San Francisco, we truly believe that it's important that students experience computer science concepts in multiple ways. We are huge fans of unplugged activities, especially as ways to introduce a concept to students so they can have that tangible, physical idea of what a computer science concept is before they then move into doing something in a programming language with it. And those programming languages are always age appropriate. And again, because we think district-wide, pre-K to 12, we scaffold the different programming languages we use, and I have a little bit more info on that in a future slide. But then most importantly, we always want to bring back that physical computing and those robotics, because that is especially where we get to see that creativity and teamwork and collaboration come out to play. So in our pre-K to 2 curriculum, we use tools that look like this. You can see Kibo right there in the middle. We also use the B-bots and blue bots. We do lots of unplugged activities. That's Rosie's runtime there in the upper right-hand corner. We love integrating with literacy. Those are 2 of the Hello Ruby books that we have lessons built around. And our programming language of choice is Scratch Junior, which is also part of the work of Marina Bears. On the next slide, you can see our 3 to 5 curriculum tools. The programming language of choice is Scratch, though we do use some code.org, we use some literacy elements. And for our physical computing, we tend to do more with Dash and Dot robots, and we do some Makey. Our Kibos have not made it up to 3.5 yet, just that's more of a district decision, because again, the way we scaffold things, but many of the things I'm going to share around 3.5 robotics use are things that can very easily be done with Kibos as well. And so when we talk about creative robotics in San Francisco, we always want to think that the robots are more than remote controlled cars. Yeah, we want to make sure that robots are being used really intentionally, and that we are doing that in our curriculum, we're doing that in our PD, we're doing that in our on-site coaching and co-teaching. We want to make sure that students see these robots as actually something that they can do something with. And the way I like to think about it is that the robots are the actors in students' stories. These robots are carrying out something. They're retelling a story. They're acting out the steps of a problem. Maybe they're navigating through a sequence of something. One of my favorites is to do like the life cycle sequences. So yeah, the robots are actually acting as a tangible entity that the students are working with. But most importantly is that creative robotics are collaborative, and that it's not just one student working with one robot in the corner, but that's a group of students working together with a single robot. And you'll see that in all the different examples that I have up ahead. So I've broken these out by grade level, and I've also attached some of the Computer Science Teachers Association standards, just so you can see that everything we do is connected to standards. Also, on the next couple slides, you'll see some short links, which will get you to our curriculum. Those are just the main curriculum landing pages where you're welcome to explore the different levels of curriculum and find some of the lessons that we have. The one caveat I will offer is that our pre-K curriculum is currently under development. Unfortunately, with school closures due to coronavirus, some of that has actually been delayed, and so you will not see any of our Kibo lessons on the website yet. And I do apologize for that, but encourage you to bookmark these sites and return to them. And you will see more of this curriculum built out, especially over the summer. But right here, you do see some students working with a Kibo robot. And one of the activities that we use both with Kibo, and we've also used this with other robotics, is just the idea of retelling the stories such as The Very Hungry Caterpillar, which is a story that most students are familiar with in their classrooms. And so we like to take stories that students already know and are familiar with and find a way to connect that to robotics. So the robot is actually the actor telling the story. First and second graders, we like to provide a little bit greater level of challenge by having them decompose and teaching them that decomposition is a really important part of computational thinking and being a computer scientist. And here you can see students are decomposing the steps that they need to do to either trace a number or a letter or to navigate a path on that map to see the different shapes, or to have the robot go to the different shapes that are on that map there. This is a really cool activity, and this is one of my colleagues who came up with this awesome idea. If you've ever visited San Francisco, you might have visited the crookedest street, which is Lombard Street, which actually looks like that picture at the bottom. And so one of my amazing colleagues came up with this idea where students created this crooked street on a piece of butcher paper, and then had a robot navigate across this street. And so they had to problem solve and iterate bit by bit to have the robot start at the beginning and make it all the way to the end. So using lots of testing and debugging throughout. And then just we like to ensure that our students are, like I said, always working collaboratively. We've developed job roles students use, and we've tried to create what we call like group-worthy tasks, where we want students to be we want the task to be so rich that the students have to be part of a group to solve it, and that they have to work together if they are going to be successful at completing this challenge. And something that Jason said that I want to echo, and again, I wish I had a full hour to talk about all the cool ways that we do this in San Francisco, but we so intentionally use robotics to reinforce literacy and math concepts, and I've seen incredible things done with teachers using robotics as a center in a math or an ELA class, where students are cycling through and maybe doing some direct target instruction with the teacher and then some independent work, and then using the robotics to practice skills like you see here. And that picture on the left is one of my favorite lessons I saw, where students were practicing just some basic math skills, and what they were doing is rolling dice and having the robot navigate to the different numbers and then navigating to the sum of those two numbers. And it was a great way just to have that physical, tangible aspect of doing math in a fun, different way, while also doing some cool robotics and learning some computer science. And so, thank you. Yeah, I want to take this time to appreciate Jason for inviting me to be part of this. Jason's going to flash my contact info up on the screen much later on, but you are welcome to reach me at email or on Twitter at any point. I have so much more that I would love to say, but I think I'm actually right at my 15 minutes right now. So I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And I will, I'll just introduce you, Jennifer, and then it'll be wonderful to hear about the work that you're doing in Bill, I really, the framing that you have in San Francisco of the idea of the robots becoming the actors in children's stories. There's so much to sort of unpack in that phrase, and it's such a wonderful summary of the way robotics is really, it's a technical skill, but it's also a way for children to tell a story, to share an interest, and it's a way of keeping that focus on the robot as like the vehicle for children's imagination. So I really appreciate what you shared about your approach to curriculum for these kids. Thank you again. And like Bill mentioned, we'll have the opportunity to do some Q&A. So if you have questions about San Francisco's program, feel free to ask them in the questions feature, and then we'll loop back to that at the end. For now, I'd like to welcome our second guest, Jennifer Barker. Jennifer is with the Newport News Public Schools in Virginia. Virginia is notable in that they were the first state in the nation to mandate computer science instruction across the entire range from K to 12. So Virginia is really a leader in thinking about the importance of computing, computational thinking, robotics, and STEM for all ages. So Newport News has, along with all the other districts in Virginia, been solving that challenge. And Jennifer manages what they call the Cyber STEAM program, and she'll tell you a bit more about that. But it's another sort of initiative of the schools there to address integrated learning of these topics starting in kindergarten. So looking forward to hearing what you have to share, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jason, for your introduction. So our journey with Kibo and KinderLab Robotics is new. This year, we started using their product. And one of the reasons, or the main reason for us, was we have received a grant from the Department of Defense Education Activity for our Cyber STEAM program. And that's because our school division is unique in that it has a large population of military connected students. So we were eligible for that grant. The grant is designed to promote a cyber security pathway for our military connected students, but it also lends a very large sphere of influence, of course, on all the students that attend the 7 schools that are part of the grant. We have specific goals that the grant lends to, and that is that we focus on lessons, robotics, and activities that build skills in computational thinking, problem solving, and digital literacy. And those were things that you heard both William and Jason talk about that are designed behind the computer science standards, as well as success for our students and this program. So to do that in the Cyber STEAM program, we offer a lot of support for teachers through professional development, lessons that are integrated and online, and we can share those with you guys as well. And then we provide robots, digital literacy programs and supports, and then we also put into the hands of students and teachers technology devices aligned to our goals. The next slide, thank you. So as we sat down and really made a list of what technology we were going to invest in, we had this money from the Department of Defense. We have to be good stewards of this while also thinking about what our goals are for our students. And as Virginia is leading the way behind this, we also have to think about the huge need of computer science jobs and how important it is to start at age 4 with the pre-K students. And I would have to say that my year of working with these teachers and these students to see what pre-K is capable of doing is mind-blowing. So we really looked at why should we invest our money in Kibo? Well, one of the biggest reasons that we chose was the amount of research that came with Kibo. The amount of research, the time they spent in empirical research, really looking at children using Kibo and looking at how children are mastering and with programming and robotics content, how it's enforcing computational thinking and what's coming out of their experiences with a type of robot like Kibo. The research that they did actually included those things that you heard Jason talking about, where students are underrepresented. And so it looked at gender differences, STEAM education, which obviously was very important to our school division, children with autism as well, and international settings for our students. So we saw that that research went into areas that were extremely important for us, and we knew that those areas needed research for this program to be successful. We wanted research to back our decision. We also saw that by using Kibo, and you can see a picture of one of our kiddos there, that's a pre-K student, but it allowed students to apply technology skills that supported the construction and application of what they needed to know in content. Also, what's really unique about Kibo is students can create digital artifacts that are connected to their integrated content. So really creativity runs the ship there, or runs the robot, I should say. And it really does work like a puzzle piece, where students are constructing and sequencing actions behind the code to actually build the computer algorithm. And those are those experiences the students will never forget. This allows them to use personal expression and creativity in a way that will stick with them as they go into those more advanced technology programs. Thinking too about how Kibo would build a foundation into the more abstract technologies. And so we felt like by giving our youngest students that concrete experience, that it would give them that foundation to take them later into Scratch Junior or Scratch or Blockly. Or one thing that's really powerful about our division is we have a large amount of robotics teams that use the First Lego League. And so they're using Lego EV3 robots, and these types of experiences will open the door for more students to come on board and feel confident in going into official robotics teams later. This also, the use of Kibo, hold on, thanks, that's okay. It inspires young students to actually see how and why codes work, so that they can take that concept and grasp a deeper understanding of daily technology that they see, that they use, mom or dad at home, wherever they are. How are these things working? What communication is being shared with that technology for it to be able to follow that communication? So then once we decided we were going to go with Kibo, we needed to figure out the best way to support our teachers that are teaching Kibo, our leaders that are helping us with developing the curriculum behind Kibo that we're using that aligns to our standards. And what we loved about KinderLab was they offered lots of face-to-face training, curriculum support through their vertical lessons that Jason talked to you about, the 160 plus hours of lessons that actually go from a novel to your most advanced, and what you can do to actually challenge even the higher grades with using Kibo. The professional development materials gave us the opportunity to turnkey lessons and PD for our teachers right away, so that we could go ahead and get Kibo out there in classrooms and get our students using it. And then Jason is a constant consultant. We have a partnership with the company that allows us to ask questions or talk about issues if we have any, or even make the program better. And then the technical upgrades that we can get through easy to install firmware. So we liked those advantages when it came to why would we choose KinderLab Robotics to help us with this. You can, yeah, there you go. So here's a couple other things that KinderLab had that was very appealing to us. Again, the curriculum lessons and support that helped when we started thinking about, we want the teachers and the students to have sustainability with this, so where the level of support is there, but not needed as much. So we saw that with all that came with these robot kits, that was definitely key to us. Also, just the alignment with our division-wide technology integration goals, as well as the goals I just briefly talked with you about with the CyberSteam program. And then the component that was so unique was that screen-free computer programming aspect with the wooden blocks that builds the concrete experiences. So earlier we touched on decomposition being a part of computer science. It's super important for the students to understand and to master. And so part of that is, what part of the program works well and what part can I take out and change? And Kibo does a great job of giving that experience to our young students, because you can break apart parts of the blocks and pull them out if they're not working, or you can have a conversation where the code breaks down and have that concrete ability to put your hands on those blocks and say, this portion didn't work well. What could I do to change it? Or was it a sensor that I needed? Or why did the robot turn one way when it should have turned another? So the blocks are great when it comes to decomposition at a young age. And that's a skill that if we know and recognize that if our students are able to do that in pre-K, how powerful that's going to be for them, you know, in the future. And then the robot is very versatile with early childhood and elementary age students. Obviously, there's so many different things you can do with it. Can move the screen. There we go. So I kind of wanted to also lay out the importance of aligning the computer science standards. In Virginia, we're leading the way with this, and I am working on the Virginia Department of Education curriculum team for computer science standards, as we're, you know, putting more and more standards to integrate next year into all of our subject areas. But it's important to think what your state's doing and how would this align to what your state needs are. And so in the presentation, you'll see where I laid out how we started with these particular standards for our first lesson that we trained teachers on to use in the classroom. And that was for kindergarten and first grade. We looked at, it was a computational, or actually algorithms and programming, and then just shows you how those align to the national standards. So I just kind of thought it was important for you to be able to see that and then think about how that would work for your state. So you can go ahead. This is where we started, though, just to kind of give you an idea. If you were to invest in Kibo and use it, a good starting point for us was in the first lesson that we rolled out to teachers and that teachers used with their students. Students constructed algorithms and programs, but then this was integrated with English oral communication skills and how students follow step-by-step directions. So as you can see, it is very easy to integrate Kibo and what you can do with it into your other standards. And then for lesson 2 for the following month, students went into constructing programs and categorized groups, which was part again of our computer science standards based on attributes. And then we integrated that with science and characteristics of living and non-living things. So you can see it's kind of scaffolding into a little deeper level there, but it's very easy to do with the curriculum that Kibo gives us and the versatility of the robot. And I can add those lessons to a link for you to have access to as well. I'll be happy to do that. So finally, I thought it would be extremely powerful for you to hear from the teachers that are actually starting to use Kibo in the classroom. William mentioned that they were interrupted because of COVID, and we were too, which was pretty, you know, disheartening. But the work that was already being done, we know, is not in vain. And so one of our pre-K teachers shared that, and these were 4-year-olds, so her students caught on quickly. They were able to program complicated movements without too much time there, she said. She also talked about how problem solving was instrumental in them being able to figure out why Kibo wasn't following the code that they wanted it to follow. And Kibo has some pretty unique sensory attachments. And so that helped bring in the senses and just what the job of the senses are. And also those senses have to be attached into the right ports. And so that's another thing that students learn from this. Very valuable experience for them. And then on the next slide, we hear from 2 kindergarten teachers. One talked about the importance, and this is just good teaching practice, but modeling for her students how to use Kibo, having them try small bits of code and then execute those. And then she created they created oral stories with the codes to observe the movements of Kibo. So think, if you're a kindergarten teacher, how that might work in your classroom. Bringing it really bringing it home for us, though, behind this grant with the Department of Defense, one of our teachers that teaches on a military base in our city, she brought in a real world connection through pretending the students were at the commissary with their families, scanning items that they were purchasing, because Kibo uses bars and you scan the bars. And she just talked about and had also told me personally the excitement that her students had to bring in that real world connection into how they were using Kibo. And then she also integrated hers into morning experiences to excite the kids about coming to school and just to give them kind of a time to play with Kibo and try it out and problem solve and all of this going on with, you know, collaborative groupings and just sharing and communicating how Kibo was working in their classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, Jennifer. That's it's really a ambitious that you're doing in Newport News, and we are very thankful to be part of it. So thank you very
We're
much
very
for sharing
excited.
that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great, great. So we have about 10 minutes left, and we have had a few questions come in. So I'm gonna ask both of you to weigh in on your experiences on some of these. We have a couple of very practical questions regarding sort of implementation of lessons with something like this. So if you wanted to just share a couple of minutes about what it looks like. We have one person who actually has been using both Kibo and the CS in SF curriculum have published, William. So appreciation there. But he or she also asks that they've had a little, they've been sort of trying to figure out things like ideal group sizes, and also people are curious about like frequency of meetings for this kind of work. So I can let you know that in terms of group size, we do recommend that children work in groups with Kibo, or really with any robotics. Collaboration, taking roles, sharing ideas, and negotiating are actually all part of the social emotional learning that is part of the bigger picture of really the engineering design process and the kinds of project work that kids do with things like Kibo. But in your experience, Bill, as you have implemented, and you, Jennifer, you know, what can you hear about effective group sizes, about role management, about frequency meeting for this kind of work? How about you first, Bill?
Sure. So in terms of group size, we always strive for about 3 to 4 per robot. And it's one of those things where I encourage teachers to persevere, just like they want their students to do. But to persevere with the group roles, because it's often a challenge and students can be resistant, but to not take that to mean like, okay, I got to abandon this and go back to one robot for one kid. Because we found that it just takes that repetition to get students comfortable with the idea of sharing a robot, and having really strong job roles is incredibly helpful. With the Kibos, my colleague has actually been working really closely with this idea of making it sort of maybe a center activity where 2 students are working on it at a time, especially with all the craft pieces that go into Kibo robotics. You know, finding ways so that those robots can be shared, knowing that some students might build something so elaborate that it has to like sort of remain during that entire class period. So we've been sort of like playing around with like different ways to group around the Kibo specifically, but I will say in general, like 3 to 4 has been sort of our sweet spot.
Similar for us. So I would say we were able to purchase enough where the average class can have 2 students per robot. If not, I would, you know, we talked about no more than 4, just because of the age, and it's very hard to share unless you've given them defined roles. That would be very important. But one thing that we've seen that's been super helpful is, I mentioned earlier, the morning experiences. And we do provocations with students where they get to actually experiment with the robots before learning about the robots. So they get to actually try it out and do some inquiry on their own about the robot, and they're encouraged to problem solve before we teach, so that if these issues come up, they kind of already have a working base of, oh, I had that happen before, let me help, or I know what to do. And so I think it's really important to give them those experiences before, so that when time comes to share, if you have to have at the most 4 per robot, they're more likely to share because they've already had experiences with the robot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all right, thank you for sharing that information. How about just briefly, like, do you do you can you tell a little bit about your schedule of implementation? Do kids come to like a coding or computer science special? Is it something that you have mostly embedded in the class teacher's day? How does computer science fit into the schedule for both of you? How about Bill first?
Sure. So we've been playing around with that quite a bit in San Francisco. Um, the most successful programs have found computer science as um, a standalone time period where we do still hope that the classroom teacher stays with that computer science specialist and then carries forward what the classroom teacher carries forward what they saw with the computer science specialist into their class. And we've actually found that after, several months of implementation with that CS specialist coming in, that classroom teachers are feeling ready to kind of carry forward and start integrating the robotics or the programming languages, even sometimes the unplugged activities, into what they're doing in their classroom. But currently, we do see it as a standalone time where it's still sort of like that integrated time. That is across like pre-K to 5.
Mm-hmm.
So we see it as integrated. And the way that we address that, because of the needs of pacing and the curriculum already that teachers are expected to teach, is that when my leadership team comes together monthly and they plan out the lessons for each of the grade bands and the technology that will be used, they look at already what's being paced for our division and the curriculum, and then they find ways to best integrate technology into that and the computer science standards. So we see that integration is our best way. And again, this was our first year, and so we know we've got to do some work behind getting that a little bit tighter and better for teachers, but we already have that on the forefront next year as computer science standards are being pushed out for all. But I mean, we just saw the power behind integration and the feedback too from teachers throughout our platform, where we discussed and collaborated what we were seeing going on in classrooms, and just hearing teachers who had taught a particular concept for years prior and then seeing a different level of engagement now that we were integrating computer science into that. So that was pretty powerful for us.
That's great. Thank you, Jennifer. That's exciting. And that's one of the advantages of how Virginia has moved forward on these mandatory standards, is gives districts like yours the opportunity to think really deeply about how to bring this kind of learning into, throughout the day. That's great. All right, well, we have, I think, just a couple more minutes left. We had one question that I think it would be helpful to address, even just very briefly, which is, given situations with school closures and with COVID, have you been doing any thinking about how to maintain the advantages of these hands-on experiences in a situation where schools might have to do distance learning? And I will share that we at KinderLab have been thinking about that a lot too, and we're working on resources to support teachers and also parents as they try to continue this kind of learning at home. But I'm curious whether you've thought about that at all. How about if you would want to start that, Jennifer? Have you thought about how to keep these advantages of hands-on computer science learning when kids can't come in and use Kibo in the classroom?
We definitely have. We have lots of resources that we've published for our teachers and students to have access to online, but we're already having a conversation about having packets where we take our robotics and send them home with students in packets. And then we will work with them virtually on lessons so that they can, pipe in and we can do robotics with them. So we're already in the beginning stages of putting together where we can get some of these robots into the hands of kids at their house and set up some, interactions that way. We're really excited about the possibility of that.
That's great to hear. That's really ambitious, but that would be an amazing resource for equity for your students. How about you, Bill?
Sure. So across our district, our primary focus was on first, social emotional health and just making sure that students had access to devices and food, and then slowly starting to roll out just the kind of the core ELA and math lessons. We're finally at a place where I'm getting contacted by computer science teachers saying, like, we're ready, we want to do some activities. We've been looking at some of the affordances of programming languages like Scratch that have like a a shared platform where students can still collaborate there. Also, there's some robotics that offer emulators, such as like the Bebot actually has an emulator that you can access online so that students can still explore a robot without actually having a tangible robot. So we're looking at ways to leverage some of those cool tools that exist and just sort of reimagine and rethink what's possible. So.
Great. All right. Well, thank you both. We are now out of time, and I just want to thank both my guests, Jen Barker and William Marsland, for their time, for sharing their expertise and their experiences. I also want to thank all of you for attending this webinar and sharing an hour of your busy schedules with us. The contact information is all there on this slide, and we would love to stay in touch with you. And I know both Will and Jennifer are very willing to share the resources that they mentioned during the slideshow, and they also welcome questions after the fact as well. You'll get an email as a follow-up from this webinar with a link to the recording, so you can come back and take a look at the imagery that was shared, or share it with your colleagues. And of course, if you're interested in learning more about Keep, feel free to connect with me around questions of professional development, curriculum, the research, or contact our team there. That's at sale@kinderlabrobotics.com, and they schedule an interactive web conference demo of the platform with you. They would love to hear from you. So thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, William.
Thank you.
Look forward to continuing to work with you in the future. Take care,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh my God.